Welcome, everyone, to the Pickleball Doctor podcast. My guest today is a legend. We'll introduce him nonetheless. Out of Poplar Bluff, Missouri, we've got a two-time state champion. We've got a four-time first-team All-ACC. We've got a 2008 Player of the Year. We've got a 2009 national champion with the Tar Heels. We've got a 13th pick in the draft in 2009 from the Indiana Pacers. We got Tyler Hansbrough right here in the studio. What's up, Tyler?
Thanks for having me on, Noah. Hey, I love the game. I'm glad to be here with you. I always love coming over to your place and playing too.
I also forgot all-time leading scorer for UNC. Let's not forget about that.
Yeah.
So, Tyler, I just love having you. I love when you come over to play. I love just hearing your stories. I think not a lot of people in general, get to do the stuff that you've done. We're talking about the small percent of the small percent that get to the level you got to play. But I want to kind of bring it back to when you were younger, right? You started out as a kid in Missouri. When did you start playing basketball?
So it's crazy. I can't remember a point in my life where basketball wasn't there. That's how early I started. I loved the game. I used to go to the gym, watch my dad and his friends play, open gym, rec play.
Was he good?
Oh, my dad was a hooper. Yeah, he was athletic. He was a track and field athlete and high jumper at Mizzou. But my dad loved the game, and so I think that's kind of where I grew to love basketball, just going out there and watching him play. And I remember the first time I fell in love with basketball. It's crazy. It's like kind of like a first, love at first sight story. But I was actually walking through my neighborhood, and a group of older kids didn't have enough to play. 3-on-3 or 4-on-4, whatever. And they asked me if I could play. And I was like, yeah, I'll jump in. And I played hard. I've always played hard. And from that moment, playing with those guys every single day, I was trying to get a game with them.
And how old were you then?
Man, I must have been first grade or something like that.
All right,
Kindergarten, first.
yeah.
I mean, and
around 6-7 years old, that's when you really
yeah,
started.
and so ever since then, like I had played basketball every single day. I'm from Poplar Bluff, which is it's not like New York. There's not a lot to do, but I was at every playground after school. I just love the game, and that's kind of how it got started for me.
That's amazing. And was it always basketball? Did you play other things?
So since my dad was a high jumper, Big 12 champion, two-time by the way, but I tried to do high jump and track for a little bit. I just wasn't all that good, and I didn't really have a passion for it. So eventually, I high jumped all the way until probably my freshman year in high school. I actually enjoyed soccer, but because I was so tall and long, I always got stuck at goalie. I got bored. I mean, soccer's a little bit boring to me, but I was a goalie, young, didn't play much, but those are the two other sports I played.
Were you always tall, or did you have a big growth spurt at some point?
No, I had a massive growth spurt actually between my 7th and 8th grade year. No, it was my 8th and 9th grade year. I grew about 6-7 inches in a summer, just like all of a sudden. And I think it's probably the reason why I have so many knee issues in my left knee is because eventually my freshman year I had grown so much. It was that summer break in school, and I remember showing up, and I didn't realize how much I had grown. But everybody was like, "Whoa, look at Tyler! Like, he's a giant." And so I didn't realize that. But my freshman year, I was 6'7", 185. Like I was super skinny, and my bones just couldn't take it. And I broke my knee actually playing my freshman year, snapped my tibia, and that was because I had grown so much.
Wow. And so as a kid, like, from, let's say, I don't know, 6 years old to 10, 11 years old, were you training more like a guard? Were you kind of, because I grew up playing basketball, and it was kind of like, if you had a big kid, automatically they would put him like, oh, you're going to play 5 or 4. And it was like, man, maybe he's big now, but he might not be big later. And when you don't develop the skills early, then later it might hurt you. So kind of how was that for you? Were you working on, your dribbling, your game that's not just post game when you were a kid, or did they already put you out there?
I worked on every aspect of the game. And I was a kid that would actually lie on the applications to get into basketball camps because I wasn't old enough. I wanted to play against competition. Gene Bess, who's was the head coach at Three Rivers Community College. He coached Latrell Sprewell. He's a legendary coach. He's in the Basketball Hall of Fame, by the way. I went to his camps, and he had so many like skill things that I was at every single camp every single summer before I was supposed to be there. And I took a lot of what he did in those camps and developed like a routine. So he had like
on your own.
On my own.
Okay.
Yeah, so this kind of came natural to me working on my game because honestly, how I got so competitive is my dad kept beating me one on one. And my dad's a doctor. And so he's busy, he was traveling. And I started working on certain areas of the game. Like I knew, hey, if I get to this elbow, I can make this jump shot. So I'd go out, I would make like 100 elbow jump shots. And then I started getting in my routine. All right, now I'm going to make 5 in a row and put a little pressure on myself. And so it kind of came natural working on my game to see, just to try to improve areas to beat my dad one-on-one. But going to those camps, it gave me a little bit of knowledge, and it gave me, kind of like a blueprint for how to work on my game and how to get better. And, a lot of, my development is a credit to Coach Bess and going to his camps because a lot of what I did was what he taught at those camps.
So just establish those routines early, and also probably saw the higher level because you were younger and say, okay, like if I work like this, maybe I can get to that or better and kind of move on from there, right? So
yeah, and whenever I talk to young basketball players, this is important. It doesn't matter what position you play. Developing the fundamentals and mastering the simple things in basketball are super important.
I mean, it's so funny because I feel like you hear that from a young age from older players all the time, right? I mean, It's like, yeah, these kids, they don't know the fun, and you can apply that to probably every sport. It's the same thing in pickleball. I mean, I'm coaching people out there, and it's like they just don't have the fundamentals, right? And so, yeah, it's probably exactly the same thing that you went through, and it's good you recognized it early and just started developing that which probably got you quickly to the next level.
Yeah, and it's kind of that, but here I'll put things in a little bit of perspective. I made 100 free throws every single day, starting in the 7th grade until I graduated high school.
So that means you took.
And so it was a make. That was a goal.
Right.
And eventually, I was getting to the point. Some days I'd walk into the gym. I would keep track of 98 out of 100 and stuff like that. But I would always go see how many shots it took me to make 100. And one of the, I don't want to brag, but one record I am very proud of is I've made more free throws than anybody to ever play college basketball. And I tell people that the reason I say this is because that's like a very simple shot. And a lot of people don't work on it like that, especially in today's game. They want to just go jump to the 3-point line because of analytics and the way the game has kind of evolved. But no, it's like the second highest percentage shot in basketball is a free throw. The first highest percentage shot is uncontested layup. It's uncontested layup. And you've got to be able to master those before you can go and start shooting 3-point shots.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so now we're going further. You're into high school. You guys are obviously doing really well. You won 2 state championships in Missouri. And, you're starting to see the path. You're probably, I don't know, by the time you get to high school, you probably have goals for yourself already of making it and going to the NBA and that kind of thing, right?
Well, actually, I didn't really start to get a lot of hype or blow up until probably the end of my sophomore year.
Well, I'm talking about more just you mentally.
Well, for me, mentally, I knew I was going to play in the NBA. I was very confident. And, I've told you this before, but, I didn't tell a lot of people, but I didn't really even think, I didn't have a plan. I didn't even think it wasn't going to happen. I was just very confident.
That was plan A and B, huh?
That A through Z.
But you probably need some level of that in order to make it that far, right? You have to have that self-belief. And yeah, I think probably a lot of people get their dreams shattered because at some point they realize it's just not happening. But I think you probably need that level of confidence in order to make it to that level.
Yeah, and I was a kid, and that's something like today, even when people or young kids like have these like huge goals and stuff like that. I don't want to be the guy that's like, nah, I mean it's not real likely. Like what else? Like have an insurance policy or something like that. No, I think in order to achieve like those goals and stuff like that, you've got to have that type of belief. But no, I was very confident. But I'll say when I really blew up in high school, I started playing AAU. Not as young as the kids play now, but my sophomore year in high school, uh, there's a huge camp every single year when I was in school, high school, the Indianapolis All-American Camp, and all the best players in high school go there. And I wasn't invited, but there's other small camps that if you play well and perform well, then you go to the big camp in Indianapolis.
So this is an invite-only camp.
Yeah, and so my AAU coach pulled a few favors and got me into the Hoop Jamboree in St. Louis. It's about 2.5 hour drive from Poplar Bluff. So I went up there and probably played the best basketball I've ever played to that date. And I got invited to the Indianapolis All-American Camp. Greg Oden was at that Hoop Jamboree too. So there were some pretty good players there.
Yeah.
And we both ended up going to the Indianapolis Nike All-American Basketball Camp. And that's where Roy Williams, Coach Williams, first saw me and started recruiting me, was at that camp.
Awesome.
This episode is brought to you by Rally Pickleball. Born from passion, built for performance. Rally is the portable pickleball machine designed to boost your skills anytime, anywhere. Customize your drills, control spins, and perfect your shots using the intuitive Rally mobile app. Ready to elevate your pickleball game? Visit rallypickleball.com today and use code pickleballdoctor to get your very own discount. Let's rally together.
All right, so you get to UNC. It's I feel like when we look at your career, it was kind of like just a gradual rise, right? And kind of like perfect kind of step by step. You get to UNC, you start playing really well, you build up Player of the Year in 2008, and you finish your career with a championship. I mean, that's got to feel like, man, I'm just doing everything right. And finally, senior year, you guys get the championship. That must have been a great feeling.
Yeah, from the outside, it's a storybook ending. But I'll say this. I was a little more lucky than a lot of incoming freshmen. The 2005 national championship team, the year before, they had Sean May, Marvin Williams. All those guys were supposed to be there my freshman year. But after Carolina won the championship, we knew Marv would probably go because he was a second overall pick in the NBA draft. I was expecting to back up Big May my freshman year, Sean May. But he declared for the NBA draft. And so there was a massive opening for the front court when I came in there, and I had a massive opportunity. I took advantage of it. And honestly, Coach Williams, there wasn't a lot of backup. So even if I did make mistakes, like he had to kind of roll with me.
Yeah.
And so my development happened much faster and opportunity more than a lot of kids.
Which is probably great, though, because you often see it in college when a kid makes some mistakes and they yank him out of the game. And it's like, man, maybe they just don't get to rebound from that mistake as quickly as they'd like to, right? So
yeah, and so later on in my career, I realized, like, it's tough to play sporadic minutes because you fall into that trap of trying to play hero basketball, try to impress people to get more minutes.
I mean, trust me, I did not play nearly at that level. The best I got to was junior college basketball. But when I first played on that team, I was coming off the bench and I had maybe like trash minutes at the end of the half. But they thought I was a two guard and I was a shooter, and they had these plays where we would come off screens and had to catch and shoot, which had never been my game. I was a point guard growing up. Mm-hmm. And so I was put in these situations where I had a couple minutes in the game and I had to come off the screens and make shots that I had never really been used to. And so I wouldn't make the shot, so they would yank me right back out of the game.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, main point guard got injured, and they were like, all right, who's going to play one? And I was like, well, that's kind of what I do. So they put me at one, and I started developing way better, and I started now getting minutes, and I was starting by a couple months into the season now because that's my position. That's what I was used to, and I had more time to show what I could do on the court. So it was just like sometimes you're just in bad positions, they pull you out, and it's like, man, I didn't even have time to show what I can do here. So that was tough. But so anyway, you get to championship, you guys win it. You guys had a great team, and now all of a sudden draft comes up, 13th pick, you go to the NBA. What's that feeling like when you get drafted?
It was honestly, it was a dream come true. I had, I'm sitting there in the green room of the NBA draft, and I had no idea where I was going to go. I thought there was a chance New Jersey was going to take me at 10. They took Terrence Williams out of Louisville. And Indiana came up, and Coach Williams is sitting there, and he looks at me and he goes, "Big fella, I think this is you." And my agent looks at me and says, "I don't think they're going to take you at this spot." And sure enough, Indiana drafted me. Larry Bird, GM. I hugged my family. I was super excited. Just not only go, be a lottery pick, but also, it was, kind of like a dream come true, and then knowing that I was going to have an opportunity to play basketball at the highest level.
Yeah. I mean, did you have a preference on what team, or you just wanted to be on a team?
I didn't care where, what team at the time, but
I mean, the team you got drafted on, that was pretty good years for Indiana, so that was a good time to be there.
Oh, we had a tough team. Oh, we had some talent. We had some runs.
You guys had pre-injury PG, who was just a stud.
Yeah, I mean, I was on the team when PG broke out. Also, when Lance Stevenson, born ready, kind of jumped onto the scene, and George Hill, David West, all those guys. We took LeBron at Miami, him, D Wade, and Bosh to Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals, and I sit here and I think occasionally, like, man, I wish we would have beat them, because I really wanted to play in the NBA Finals. And I remember that Game 7 in Miami. LeBron showed up, and it's one of the best basketball games I've ever seen. It's the best basketball game I've ever witnessed by a player. Wow. He was on it. It was over from the tip.
Wow. So it wasn't like, man, we had a chance in this game. This one was, he took over, and it was.
We had our opportunities. They were a much more talented team. I think we had a 2-1 lead on them in the series, but they were too talented. They should have beat us on paper, by the way. It would have been a massive upset, but I think about it a lot.
Well, still, just to make it there, obviously it would have been really nice to see the next step, but you never know. You get to the finals, yeah, great, you make it to the finals, but that's not the end of the road too, right? You still have to perform there and trying to beat the other team. So it's like, anything can happen at that point too. But still, just the fact to make it there, and we're talking about one of the, I think, probably the sport that requires the most mix and match of all kinds of skills. I think basketball is just up there in terms of skill, athleticism, IQ, knowledge of the game. All that stuff kind of comes into play in that sport. So just for you to make it there and all the way to the top, I just think that's incredible. And obviously, being a basketball fan, that's just that's the pinnacle of athleticism and sports to me. So that's really unbelievable. So you spent 4 seasons with the Pacers, and then 2 seasons with the Raptors, and 1 season with the Hornets,
yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so let's kind of talk about transitioning to the Raptors and maybe how you finished your career and how that felt, because I know you went to China after that to play for 3 years.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how you ended in the NBA and why you felt like you maybe couldn't compete at that level. I know you had some knee problems and injuries, so let's kind of go through that a little bit.
Listen, I've always felt I could compete at any level in basketball. So my time in Indiana, they had David West. Listen, David West was an all-star, and my role was I was a bench guy, and as an athlete, I wanted to pursue a starting role, and I had played very well for Indiana. I had been a starter. My second year, performed really well. We were a playoff team. They signed David West in the offseason. I took kind of like that reserve role, and David West, he was one of the best veterans or teammates that I've ever had. I learned a lot from him and why he had such a successful NBA career as well. But I wasn't going to take his spot. Contract, they had too much invested, and he was a go-to guy. I mean, we ran plays for him when we needed a bucket. So, I was unrestricted. No, I was a restricted free agent. That means that, they have an option to sign me for my 5th year. And if another team offers me the contract, the Pacers can match it, and I have to go there. But I had told them that I would want to go to pursue another spot if David West is coming back. So they got David West back. And then Toronto, that, kind of, they let me go, and I was an unrestricted free agent. Toronto reached out, and I felt like me and my agent at the time, we felt like that was a good spot for me. I was a very good defender, physical player. I felt like there was a need for me at Toronto. And
again, great players on that team. You end up with Lowry and DeRozan, who's mid-range,
we're a playoff team.
Mid-range king, and just great players on that team too.
Yeah, so. And so, I went to Toronto. The game had been changing. The power forward position is kind of extinct. I mean, it's positionless basketball. They want 3-point shooters. So I was trying to, adjust my game a little bit, and there wasn't my style wasn't in high demand. Mm-hmm. But it just seemed like the opportunities I got in Toronto. I just never really capitalized, and I dealt with some injuries. I enjoyed my time there. I had great teammates. We had a great team. Toronto has an amazing fan support. I learned a lot. I loved my time there. But, it didn't really work out like I envisioned. But, I had I wouldn't change that. And then, after those 2 years, 2 playoff teams, I went to Charlotte. And Charlotte was a great experience for me as well. We had a great locker room. It wasn't really the dream role. If you blink, you miss me when I played in Charlotte. And at the end of my time in Charlotte, I was kind of in a dark spot. Yeah. I love the game of basketball. I put so much work into trying to evolve my game and add new things. And, in the NBA, listen, if you're kind of a veteran player, you're not going to see many 6-7 year guys just change who they are as far as their game. I was kind of stuck in that stereotype role of hey, in the NBA, you're a screener, you're a defender, and, a low post scorer when there's a mismatch.
Right.
And, I'd kind of lost my love for the game after Charlotte. I worked so much in the off season. I just wasn't getting to showcase it. And it wasn't going the way I wanted. And that's when China came into play. And China was some of my favorite basketball and memories of playing basketball.
So how did you mentally, tell yourself, listen, I need something different? And how did you decide on China? Because there's other leagues that are good too. Is China number 2 in terms of paying people and the level in terms of the world? Or is there, I know there's good basketball in Europe, but, there's the EuroLeague is really high level too. But it's just how did you decide on China basically?
First of all, yeah, these leagues are high level. They would smack any D1 team by 20-something points. It's high level basketball. EuroLeague, China.
Yeah,
much better than D1 college. But how'd I end up in China? Listen, it was the shortest season, and after the NBA, they pay the most. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
And so that's why I ended up there. And I was actually excited about China. So it's a very demanding league for imports. There's only 2 imports, which means 2 players that are non-Chinese per team.
Yeah, they do that in European teams too, where if you're for example, in Belgium, if you play there, I think they allow 4 or 5 international players on the team. You can't they promote basically their own players so that they can develop them and keep keep their teams growing too. So
and the market wouldn't be as what it is if they did allow more. But I'll say going to China a lot, I knew that I was going to take on a big role. I was having plays, a lot of the stuff that I'd been working on as far as scoring in different areas. I got to showcase that. I had really developed my jump shot. And, I'd lost a little bit of my confidence from, like you said, I was a sporadic player. Got minutes here and there towards the end of my NBA career. And, I was I was trying to impress, coaches or, just try to play hero basketball, which never works out, especially if you're a role player. But going to China, my best friend went with me. I got away from all the distractions, all the noise. I didn't have anybody criticizing me. And if they did criticize me, the language barrier, I didn't know. And so
maybe they were criticizing you the whole time.
well, I didn't have them. So now I have the mindset, I don't really even care.
Yeah.
I don't value other people's opinion all that much. But back in the day, like that was a huge flaw of mine. I cared. I wanted, I wanted to prove people wrong instead of play the game for the right reason because I loved it. And, playing professional basketball, whether it's an NBA, overseas, that's a big achievement. And if you love the game, you play it for that reason, not just to end up in the NBA.
So it sounds like you got back to kind of pre-NBA love for the game of like, listen, like I'm out of the NBA, that chapter's over.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm here. I'm gonna make the best of it, get back to what I love about this game, and it sounds like it went really well. Maybe mentally even kind of brought you back from not enjoying the game enough, and to now you're out there, you're in your own little bubble with your best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, man, we're just gonna enjoy it. I'm gonna play some good basketball, and I think you dropped almost 50 in one game, didn't you?
Yeah, I was. By my third season, I was playing so well. Yeah, I was putting up crazy numbers. Yeah.
I mean, the thing that people don't realize is, first of all, dropping 50 in any game is crazy, but dropping it in a pro level that's not NBA but overseas, like that would be like, no one does that in college here. Like It's just like, dropping 50 in it. I mean, you must have been just like back to things that were working, feeling good, feeling confident, and that's just really cool.
And so I know you have a lot of pickleball listeners. Listen, guys in the NBA, I don't care where their rank on the roster is. If they get into a rhythm and you don't take away what they do well, every player in the NBA does something spectacular, and you may not see it, but if they get into a rhythm and you don't know what they do great, they're going to embarrass you. And it's just one of those games where, the rim felt like a hula hoop. And so, I had it going. Confidence was up. I was pulling from everywhere. So, that was I wish I played like that every game. But, that was a great memory.
All right, so you're back from China. Basketball career is now coming to an end, right? Obviously, injuries, body, it's tough on the body. And let's talk about you coming into some pickleball now, right? So I met you on the pickleball court probably, a couple years ago now, maybe a little less than that. But, tell me how you got into pickleball. What's the story there? We all got our little story of how we started playing, and we'll kind of see how we can tie this into some pickleball.
All right, so first of all, I was going through a lot of surgery. Like I had 4 knee surgeries on my left knee, and I had a ton of rehab. And so I had to give up the game. Just my body couldn't take it anymore. And so my brother played tennis, in Kentucky, and I grew up playing a lot of ping pong. I love ping pong. I've always loved ping pong. I went out there to try to hit some tennis balls with him. I was like, man, this sucks. I threw the racket. Tennis, I was like, no way.
If you can't hit a ball, tennis is the worst.
I've never really, tennis requires a little work. And so pickleball was the middle ground.
Yeah.
And I convinced him and his wife to pick up some paddles, and we went and played pickleball. They got more addicted than I could ever dream of. 3 courts at their house. I started playing every day. And so...
And your brother's a good player now, right?
My brother's a very high-level player. We
need to get him out here.
Yeah, we need to. Yes, Ben is very good. And so I come back to North Carolina, spent a lot of time. I did my rehab in Kentucky, right outside Nashville. And so when I got here, I started going to Ephesus. And
for those who don't know, Ephesus is the local park here.
Yeah, it's a local park. And so
it's the typical crowd, 8 to 11 a.m., average age of 60 plus.
So I got healthy, and I didn't anticipate this, but my life has always been basketball. And so I'm sitting here, I'm like, I have no basketball. I have this massive amount of free time. So I started going to Ephesus, the pickleball park, every single day. And I was getting worked by the 60-year-old ladies. I was like, and I was pickleball can bring out some rages in you that you didn't even think was possible. I was getting worked by the retirement community. I was like, what the hell?
And for people who don't, pickleball, sometimes they don't necessarily know who Tyler was. Tyler in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, is known by pretty much everyone who knows anything about the UNC Tar Heels. And so this guy shows up at a public park, and you got these older people that are looking at probably someone they watched play college basketball and rooted for years. And now they're like, oh, wow, Tyler's here. And they get to smack him at pickleball. It's like...
Yeah, when I walked onto the court, they got excited like, oh, yeah, we're about to work his ass. And so I was like, hey. And so I started getting worked out there. And so I started working on my game a little bit. And I don't know why. I just felt like I had to go out there and dominate. So I got to where I dominated the Ephesus crew out there, which is nothing like...
Just went out and dominated the older ladies there.
Yeah, and so like eventually... I got to the point where, like everybody else that plays pickleball, like I'm addicted, and I try to learn and study the game, and I'm very competitive, and I've, being in the area, like the best player around. So I had always heard about the pickleball doc, and I was like begging to get some games against you. But I did take some, I work with you. I took some lessons. You really helped my game, and it's. A couple years ago, I had no business being on the court with you. I can get a few points here and there, but that's kind of how my I got into pickleball. But I will say that pickleball like found me at the perfect time, and like it was very good for me because whenever you're a professional athlete and you retire,
it's like what's next?
That's very difficult to go through emotionally, and so having pickleball kind of took that. Weight and, anxiety off of me in a way. And that's probably why I was so addicted. It was a little bit of a refuge and provided me a lot of happiness in a tough time in my life.
I think you hear that a lot from, some of the pro players that I've talked to. And obviously they're not coming in from a basketball standpoint. Usually, most of them had some kind of high level tennis if they did, either college or a few of them were able to try to make it to the pros, even if they didn't get to the top level. They were maybe playing like futures tournaments, things like that. And I think a lot of them they're kind of like, well, my athletic career, I'm not making it in tennis, and then they found this ability to, the thing is, it's not just a good tennis player will be a great pickleball player, but we've seen it a lot with high level tennis players that have come into pickleball, and yeah, they're good, but they don't win, right? And so that's where it's like. It's a little bit different, but obviously if you can apply and change your mindset and learn the game, then you have a very high, starting point coming from a high level of tennis. But you're right. I think a lot of these players, they found, and not just pros, I think a lot of the older people who are playing too have found like, man, I used to play, this sport for 20 years and I can't anymore. And pickleball has kind of like given them an opportunity to be competitive again, and they love it. And that's what I think is beautiful about pickleball too, is just people from all different kind of walks of life are able to pick up this game and play it at various levels and just kind of fire up that competitive spirit a little bit. So
yeah, and the other thing about pickleball is like pretty much everybody in my life except for my family, like there's a basketball connection. And so it's one of the few times in my life, like the community in pickleball, like I've had the opportunity to meet so many different people in different areas, like it's been really good for me from that as I've met a ton of great people, and it's good because I've got a little bit of a community outside of basketball as well, and have met a ton of great people.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because I've seen you obviously around Chapel Hill, but being on in tournaments and stuff like that, I've always also seen you in other areas of the country, and people know you much more around Chapel Hill in terms of the people we encounter every day. But when we go to tournaments, it's kind of funny. We're at the facility there, and people obviously see you're tall, and they're like, "Oh, this guy probably played this." But I'm surprised at how much sometimes younger pickleball players have no clue who you are. And so I don't know how that feels for you. You're going places, and now you're able to be on a court, and maybe you're getting worked by these people. You're like, "Man, I used to be like an elite athlete here, and one of the best there is."
Well, I never judge a book by its cover in pickleball. That's but the pros. That's a different story, but that's one. I kind of like that a little bit because I go to these tournaments and people are just viewing me for who I am, but I'm 6'9", so it's hard to hide that. So sometimes every day of my life, this is not pickleball related. Somebody's gonna ask me if I played basketball every single day, no question. But it's funny. I'll meet people, then we'll I had each other on Instagram or whatever, and like, oh, I didn't realize you were a professional basketball player. I was like, yeah. But
That's kind of nice too, though, because then they maybe you start conversations in a different way that you wouldn't have. Because I mean, we even know people here locally who growing up, they were watching you and they were big fans of you, and now they end up on the court with you, and it's like they're just like a little bit first, but then you get to talking to them, and now it's like, oh, he's just a person, and you get to learn about you instead of just, oh, Tyler the basketball player.
yeah, absolutely. I'd rather somebody like me for who I am than versus a school basketball player and like me for that. But yeah, that is a really cool dynamic. But I love the game so much. Like, it has given me the opportunity to meet some of the, like, Riley Newman's a big basketball fan.
Yep.
And I met him in Kansas City when me and my brother first started competing in national tournaments, and talking to him and watching him play and him knowing who I was really cool. I maybe a little bit of starstruck just because I love the game so much, and I watch all the tournaments, and so Riley was one of my favorite players just because he plays his hand speed and initiates like a very aggressive player. So I really liked his style. That was cool, and I've been in other pickleball events because of being a pro basketball player, like playing against Christian Alshon and drilling with him a little bit. Like, that was really cool experience for me as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yes, you're maybe not well known in the pickleball world, but you do get some opportunities to drill with these guys and meet these guys, just which allows you not only to meet them and talk to them and get to know them a little bit, but also you get to work on your game here and there when you go to these places. So that's kind of cool too.
Yeah, and listen, I'm starting to study the game a little bit more and trying to understand it. There's so much to pickleball. Like, you can get overwhelmed. Like, I've got to focus on a few areas, try to get better at those, and then we'll start, a list where I start adding this one. And I'll start taking from the lists I'm really not good at. But drilling with those high level players, pros, like when I drilled with Alshon, I was just amazed at how compact and smooth his swings were. And I left there, I was like, man, I'm going to the batting cages. I'm swinging like I'm in a home run derby. Like, why am I doing that? And so, like, just like playing against those guys, I think really, like, you learn different things. And listen, you can't take what they do and try to apply it to your game, but you can see some of, like, their footwork, their basics and stuff like that. I learn a lot from them.
So I want to know a little bit, how are you working on your game these days? I know you drill a decent amount. I know you play a decent amount. You're almost on a court every day these days.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of take me through, because I think what you can certainly take into pickleball is your work ethic in terms of being able to get better, which amateur players have a hard time with. If I coach people, they're drilling, they're practicing, that's the hard part for them. They don't necessarily enjoy it. I think the downfall of pickleball is that it's so much fun that people enjoy playing games more than they do drilling. And so how have you brought that practice and work intensity to your pickleball drilling? Because like you said, hey, I would be making 100 free throws every day. Well, if you're going to go and want actually to be better at pickleball, you're going to have to do something like that. You're going to have to spend your drilling sessions very focused, very much, with purpose. So if I'm working on my drop shots, it's not just a 5-minute thing.
Yeah.
I've got this 30-minute session where all I'm focused on is my drop, and maybe it's only one kind of drop. Cross-court forehand drops, and I'm doing that straight for 30 minutes. It's like, how are you drilling? Are you taking that approach at all, or how's it going for you?
So when I first started playing pickleball, there was so much to the game once you really get into it that I was overwhelmed. And, I didn't have technique. That's why tennis players translate so well, their technique in hitting the ball, the footwork. I remember I took a lesson from you. We were drilling, or I took a lesson. You told me always make contact in front of the ball. I had no clue to do it. That was one of the best pieces of advice I had gotten. And so eventually I started developing technique. That's basic foundation. And as my game has evolved, I'm trying to apply like the basics that I use for basketball and make it translate a little bit. So I'm not trying to implement the Ben Johns backhanded flick without having a good third shot, consistent drop. The more I play and the more I really look at my game, like, I'm starting to realize, like, maybe I can just be a great soft player and then pick my opportunities to attack and be very good at, my patterns and where I'm placing the ball on the court. And so I'll just give you an example. I've really tried to develop my third shot drop. And people always tell young players, you got to start working at the kitchen. Well, if you can't get to the kitchen,
That's right.
there's no point of starting to, like, if you're not going to dink, don't dink for an hour.
That's why
Like,
a lot of players I coach at the, let's say the 3-0 level, and they've maybe taken lessons or camps before, and they talk about they've worked on their dink. I'm like, well, why would we work on your dinking? You're not getting to the net. If you never get to the net, you're practicing something you don't use. So let's get you there first, and then we can develop that part of your game.
Yeah. So this past couple months, I've made sure that 5 days of the week I'm hitting 100 good drops, and that's not like top spin. That's not like slice drop. That's just like
unattackable
my
balls.
push drops to get, like, I only count the balls that land in the kitchen that are unattackable that would allow me to get to the kitchen. And then I started doing that from the baseline, and then I started adding, like, okay, transition zone drops cross court. I started adding my push drop, and then I started putting a little top spin, and then adding that slice drop to different angles inside court. Right now, like, I feel like my third shot drop is very consistent from the baseline. Right now, I'm trying to focus on the transition zone. I think once you get that area like developed, I think that's where you really start to separate yourself from lower level players.
And it's kind of interesting when you think about your game in basketball. I always thought you had really good soft touch around the rim, right? You would always kind of have these balls, and maybe they hit the rim, but kind of that soft touch you had would lead that ball to drop in. Like you said, great free throw shooter. So if you apply that to pickleball, having good hands and a good feel, that's so important. And I think what you've been able to do is decrease your energy level from your feet and lower body, and now it's translating into you feeling more through the paddle through your hand. And so as you start working through the transition zone, you're going to find yourself, man, this is like a free throw. I need to be calm. I need to let my hands feel, and I need to just use my touch, which is exactly the same thing you're going to do in the transition zone. And once that energy from your feet goes away, and now you're settled, and now all of a sudden you get to feel that ball and get the touch, you're going to start doing those same kind of little soft shots around the rims that are just going to drop in the kitchen for you. And that's what I think you're probably finding out more and more.
Yeah, and the transition zone, that's not a fun place to put a lot of work in. I'll be honest with you. I would rather get a ball and whack it. But I know that it's the right play, and I know for me to, evolve in my game, like I've got to be smarter, and I've got to be able to reset that ball from the transition zone. But I'll say, like, if you don't have the technique foundation and you're not, like, knowing how to hit the ball, the reason why it's so important is because you can be more consistent, and your shots and your swing path will be, pretty much the same every single time, which I do think is an important thing for third shot drop and, getting better and hitting consistent shots in pickleball.
So it sounds like you're applying some of that work ethic you had in basketball to pickleball, like that focus, the intensity, and that doesn't mean just hitting the ball hard. It just means being focused in your practice in order to get better, right? Getting the reps, getting good reps, that kind of thing. And I think, amateurs can really benefit from hearing this kind of thing, because if you want to get better, you have to have focused practice. You have to be not just going out there hitting without really thinking. You have to think about the shot, try to execute it, and then once it looks good, the mechanics are good, then you have to repeat it until you feel really comfortable with it.
Yeah, and 100%. And just like in basketball, I developed like a routine. So anytime I'm about to drill, I do this routine. And it's kind of like similar in basketball. It's a bunch of touch shots. Kind of got me ready before a workout. Kind of touched on all the shots. We just briefly hit a bunch of shots that I would take in a game or whatever, and then I go into my focused area of work. And it's I will say, if you're a serious pickleball player, you want to advance your game, they're do not get overwhelmed and try to add pro shots, flicks, and all that stuff. Master those basics and those shots. And believe me, I wish I had a powerful drive and came from tennis, but I don't. So, I'm a right side player. I enjoy the right side, which is not my mentality. And people look at me weird, but like it's fun to really, kind of direct that left side player and put them in positions to score.
Yeah, and just working and being around Ben, that's probably one of the big things I saw about his game and his approach is off the court how he approaches practice. I mean, I've hit with him and it's like, man, the guy just is so honed in on what he's working on. So, and it depends on what we're working for. So if it's like he's working on singles because we have a singles match that day, he's working on specific shots that are so his drop in singles is different than his drop in doubles. And he will work, let's say, a singles drop and he just goes over and over it. And I think they're all good, right? Because to me, I'm a good player, but I feel like, hey, these drops are good. But to him, it's like he's not quite getting exactly what he wants. And he's going to keep hitting that ball until he feels like he gets what he wants. And it's just like the approach to drilling and focus that he has kind of opened something to me. Like you're just like, wow, it's just so good. And the quality of his shots are just so good. But it comes from really, really focused repetitions with a specific shot that he's trying to accomplish. And that applies to everything. Down the line drops, cross court drops, down the line drive, cross court drives. And he's trying to do something specific on each shot. And it's like, man, this guy's a machine. And that's why he doesn't miss much. That's why he's so good. It's because you just see how he approaches his practice and drilling.
The more I watch Ben play and, the more I get into pickleball, the more I respect, his game. And, it's one thing to be at the top for a certain amount of time, but to stay there, I mean, there's a reason why he does that. But also, the one thing that I look at Ben when I see him play is how efficient his movement is. Yep. Like, he doesn't look, as athletic as you would think, but he is super athletic, and every movement that he makes on the pickleball court, like, it's for a purpose.
Yeah. And again, and that's probably another part for amateurs to really get into is the efficiency for Ben comes from the knowledge of the game. And really, I mean, the percentage of that he, like, the probability that a shot goes a certain place, he is so on top of that. For example, if a ball is hit to a certain spot in a certain way, he knows where it is likely to go back. Mm-hmm. To a certain percent, I don't know exactly the numbers, obviously, but to a certain degree, his accuracy in predicting how the play happens is really high. And when you know what's going to happen, your movement and position is going to be so efficient because you're there so early. And so for amateurs that want to get better, I would say learn the game, learn the patterns of where the ball goes after a certain shot, which will just make you more comfortable in what to do next. And when you're positioned well, the shot actually is often easier. It's, hitting the ball for Ben is probably the easiest part of the game almost because his positioning is always so good.
Yeah, and that's the one thing is like really helped my game is I'm starting to understand that more. And if you know where you hit the ball and you know pretty much where it's going to come back at you from and where the spots are that the other team can hit to, it's a huge advantage. I'm starting to learn that a lot, and I've studied. It's funny you say that. I've studied like Collins, like his drops. Yep. And then where Ben moves based off of where he drops it. And I'm starting to like, tell my partners when we go and compete, it's like, I'm put it here in the ball. And like, it's been highly effective.
And it happens a lot. I mean, and it's almost like, I'm sure you felt this way playing basketball where you're kind of in the flow of the game. And it's like, you almost know what's happening. You know what's coming, even if it hasn't happened yet during a play. If I go here, they screen there, this person's probably going to drop. And you just kind of have a much better sense of the play, your comfort level in the game, and then now you're just playing so relaxed because you just know what's happening. Yeah. And so that's, if you can get to that point in pickleball, I think it'll raise your game level without having to put in so many shots and drill. Like just knowing what's happening is just a huge advantage.
Yeah, I've really tried to work on my spacing as well. That's positioning and partner spacing, like super important. And the better spacing and positioning I have with my partner, like it's harder for other teams to put the ball away. I've noticed that as well. And so I can try to predict where they're going to go as well.
Well, Tyler, I'm super excited to just see you continue to grow in pickleball. I love having you around. I think we're going to just keep
keep playing more and more as we go. But I want to thank you for coming in today. I'm glad that we're friends. We're playing some pickleball, and that you get to come on the podcast, and I get to talk to a legend here and there. So that's awesome. So thanks so much for being here.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, and maybe we should go play a little pickleball.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Pickleball Doctor podcast. My name is Noah Saraban, and I'm your host. If you enjoyed the content, please subscribe on Spotify and YouTube, and share it with your contacts and friends. Please follow the Pickleball Doctor on Instagram and Facebook for updates, giveaways, and to be sure you don't miss any new episodes. If you're interested in clinics or camps, contact thepickleballdoctor@gmail.com. Once again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.